Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Youth Justice Leadership Institute informational webinar, session 1. My name is Jenny Peppers, and I'm an office manager at the National Juvenile Justice Network. Before we get started, I would like to run through a few things. So when you enter the conference, make sure that you have enabled your audio. If you happen not to be able to join the discussion on your computer, you can dial in by phone. Sometimes you might be able to find, the audio might be better. Since we have quite a few people on this webinar, everyone is muted. But we will make sure that, towards the end of the webinar, we're going to have some time for you guys to ask questions. But during the webinar, you can also ask questions by typing your questions in the chat box as well. That is actually located on your right. You're going to see the control panel. So you can see, it's going to say questions, so you can type it there. And I make sure to ask those questions to our presenters after she's done presenting. And then, again, towards the end of the webinar, we're going to also have some time for you to actually raise your hand and ask questions. So that is to say you have two options. You can type in the questions along the way, or you can raise your hand at the end if you want to speak up to our presenters. And this webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on the NJJN website in the next day or two. All right. Now, please let me pass this on to Tracy. Hang on for a second. All right. So today we have Tracy. Tracy is our Youth Justice Leadership Institute coordinator, and we also have Lenore Wand joining us here today. Thank you so much. She is the 2018 YJLI alumni. All right, Tracy, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and hello to everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us today to learn about NJJN's Youth Justice Leadership Institute. I'm Tracy Tucker, as Jenny already noted, and we have with us today Lenore Wyatt, one of the 2018 alumni of the program, and we're just excited to be here to discuss the Institute with you all today. And as you, Jenny mentioned, we'll have an opportunity to get to questions throughout the presentation, and then again also towards the end. Lenore, would you like to just say hello and maybe tell everyone a little bit about yourself or anything else you'd like to say about the Institute?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lenore Wyant. Currently, I am the Racial and Ethnic Disparities Coordinator for the state of Pennsylvania. I am a 2018 YJLI Fellow, and currently I serve as one of two YJLI alumni reps. And just to echo Tracy's sentiments, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to connect with us. We know everyone's dealing with a variety of challenges right now as we learn more about COVID-19 and the process and the potential impacts. So thanks to everyone for being on the call. That's all I have, Tracy. Thanks.
Thank you, Lenore. Thank you. I'm going to start off just by telling you a little bit about NJJN and the organization, and then I'll move on to discussing the Youth Justice Leadership Institute. So the National Juvenile Justice Network was an organization that was founded back in 2005, and the goal of the NJJN was just to connect organizations and advocates in the juvenile justice field in order to give us all sort of the opportunity to kind of talk and network with each other, to talk about what's going on in our states, and to discuss and share strategies around policy and the advocacy actions that we were all taking in our individual states. So we have individuals and organizations as members of NJJN across 43 states and DC. And NJJN, this is the only organization of its kind in the United States. And we're just committed to uplifting the voices of advocates to demand change both locally and nationally in order to kind of shrink our youth justice systems and create fair and equitable systems. So with that, I'm going to, I wanted to mention that one of the major activities of NJJN is actually our forum that we have. That's fine, Jen, you can go on to the next slide. We have an annual forum where everyone is able to kind of come together. And as I said, we're able to kind of network and share ideas and strategize about the best ways to kind of make a movement in juvenile justice. And so that leads me into sort of the creation of the Youth Justice Leadership Institute. So in 2009, at one of these annual convenings, one of the attendees stood up and sort of questioned the lack of diversity in the room at the time. And she challenged, the then sort of majority white attendees to begin to sort of address why there were not more people of color present, at the forum and in that space when the majority of the people that we serve in the juvenile justice system and the people who are most impacted by the juvenile justice system tend to be youth of color and communities of color. And so that sort of calling out, if you will, sort of began the discussions around how do we cultivate more leaders of color within juvenile justice advocacy work. And so there was, after that 2009 convening, yeah, that's right, 2009 convening, there was a year of planning in 2010, and then the first cohort was actually started in 2011. And there have been 9 cohorts that generally begin with about 10 fellows in each program. And this 2020 cohort will be the 10th cohort and then the 10th anniversary of the program. So I'm going to go ahead and move in and talk a little bit about the program. I know I'm talking a lot, and then I'll pause for a moment to allow Lenore to kind of pipe in, and then also to kind of see if you have any questions. Jenny, I was going to move to the next slide. Thank you. So the about the Institute. So the program is a year-long unpaid fellowship focused on 3 component areas. It's leadership development, youth justice, juvenile justice system overview, and advocacy skill development. And so the learning in this fellowship takes place throughout the year, but a great deal of the leadership development takes place during 2 4-day type of in-person sessions that we have. So one of these sessions is typically held in September, and then the other is typically held in March or April the following year. And then throughout the year, we'll have monthly conference calls to focus on the other areas of, leadership development, juvenile justice overview, and focusing on developing advocacy skills. So NJJN does cover the cost of travel for fellows to these in-person sessions that we have. Additionally, sort of as part of the program, there are additional readings and materials that we're able to kind of discuss that allow us to just to kind of develop our skills and to kind of dig deeper into our issues and our development. Lenore, can I pause here for a minute just to kind of see if you have anything you'd like to add?
Sure.
Or...
The only thing that the one thing that I want to definitely add is just a little bit more about the time that is spent in between the 2 in-person sessions. You did mention that there's monthly phone calls, but sometimes there's 2 calls in the month. And so one of those calls that we would have would be an educational opportunity. So a fellow from a previous class that had an interest in a particular topic would get on the line and kind of give us a training of some aspect, something about maybe the nonprofit world or something about advocacy, maybe how they worked with legislators to change some policy or a law in their state. And then the other call was just an actual, just a check-in. How are you personally doing? What are you experiencing? What can we do for you? So there's that educational piece, and there's really the fellowship part that I felt like went on between those two in-person meetings. So you really have a lot of opportunities to both learn and to be able to kind of express and verbalize and ask questions.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that for me too, Lenore, with the because there are two sessions each month. Additionally, as Lenore talked about the opportunities to kind of fellowship with one another, we also sort of we convene as a group, as an entire cohort to kind of discuss juvenile justice issues, but then we also there's an opportunity to break into some peer groups to discuss other issues, and there's also like a buddy pairing. And in addition to that, each fellow is also assigned a mentor to sort of help them navigate through the experience, and to also sort of be a resource for the fellow throughout the process and throughout their working on their advocacy project. There is a fee for participation in this program, but the fee should not prohibit anyone from applying or attempting to be a part of the fellowship. We have scholarships to cover the fee if someone is unable to pay the fee. It's a sliding scale type fee, and it is listed in the application. Also within the application, there's a box that can be checked that you can note whether or not you will require a scholarship for the program.
So Tracy, just can I pipe in? I want to make sure that we're clear. It's not a fee to apply, but
yes.
if you get accepted, it's a fee. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes. There is a registration fee once you are accepted to the program. So thank you for that, Lenore. There's no fee now for the application, but the application does make note that there is a fee for the program in the event that you are selected. And in the event that you're selected, you can select whether or not you would require a scholarship for that in order to continue. And additionally, fellows will have access to some of the services of NJJN while they're part of the fellowship. Currently, we have 73 graduates of the program right now working in various capacities across the United States. And then the program also then continues sort of as alumni. We continue to kind of connect and have quarterly conference calls to share information, to discuss trends in juvenile justice work. And then we also have an annual retreat each year. It's generally before our national forum to just kind of connect and offer support to one another. And so that kind of brings me to the application process. I feel like I've been talking entirely too much. I don't know if anyone has any questions, or if Lenore, there's anything that you'd like to add at this time before I kind of go into the application process a little further.
I was just gonna speak a little bit about how I got in and kind of what my experience was. And so I got referred to the program by another fellow who happened to be a co-worker of mine. She participated as a fellow several years prior, and just thought that I would be a good candidate to participate. And really the timing of her giving me those materials, it couldn't have been any better. I had only been in my position as the state racial and ethnic disparities coordinator for about a year. And I think the process really helped to guide me into relationships and people who understood and who helped me to understand how deeply race is woven into the fabric of this country. I think maybe I knew it, I maybe understood it before, but I live in central Pennsylvania and I grew up in a community that was predominantly white. It was maybe 8% Black as a kid growing up. So that really kind of shaped me professionally. That kind of had a big influence on how I was as a professional. And I feel like this opportunity just really it lets you have frank conversations with professionals from like all around the country about things that maybe you've had some concerns about, but you just didn't know who to go to. And so this provides you with that opportunity. You can say things without fear of consequence or judgment. And really, if anyone on the line is blessed with the opportunity to be a fellow, I can 100% guarantee you that you come out of this on the other side as a better professional and even as a better person. So really, I was thrilled with the experience. The people that were in the fellowship with me, they own nonprofits. There were lawyers. There was a poet on the screen right now. Is a gentleman that was in my cohort, Art. He's a poet and he works as a youth advocate. And so there were federal workers, there were state workers, there were people who had just got out of undergrad, people who were in a grad program or had just gotten out, and there were people who had worked for years in the field. And so just coming together as a collaborative like that, it's a really life-changing experience. So sorry to go down the road there a little bit, but really it is a valuable, this is a valuable thing that's available. So
Yeah, no need to apologize, Lenore. Yeah, no, that is absolutely what what we needed to hear about the program. So the application process is fairly straightforward. The application is available to be downloaded. And once you've completed the application, then you just submit it to my email. We are very firm with regard to the deadline. The application is due by May 1st at 11:59 p.m. So please just allow yourself some time to complete it adequately. So if you are interested, I would encourage you to go ahead, if you have not already, to download the application, take a look at it. There, it does require you to have 2 nominators, and those nominators must also complete some information about you and the work that you have done. So you will need to give folks a little bit of time in order to kind of prepare that and get that submitted along with your application. One component of the application is your advocacy project. It's really it's the major kind of component of it, honestly. So each person is asked to sort of come up with an advocacy project, something that you would be working on throughout the year. And the key is that the project should focus sort of on a systemic issue around juvenile justice work in your community or your state. And sometimes folks may have a little hang up with that, where they submit an application with an advocacy project that is a great project, but it may be very direct service focused and not necessarily have a systemic approach to it or a systemic piece. So it just would have to, in order, when I say that, it just would need to be able to impact multiple kids somehow in your state, and sort of touch some way in which the system sort of functions towards youth, or some way that the system sort of responds to youth. And so you can be very creative with it. I would encourage you to, to take some time and to think about something that you really would want changed in your community, and allow this to sort of be an opportunity for you to kind of work on something that you could be passionate about. On average, we receive about 25 applications each year for the 10 slots. Each application is reviewed for completeness, and then the applications are read and reviewed by 4 additional application readers. And then those applications, all the applications are reviewed and scored, and then the top 13 to 15 applicants are then invited to interview with an interview committee. And then those top 10 individuals would be selected and offered positions in the fellowship. And then there's a process where you actually have to accept or deny your spot within the in the fellowship. So I think that's all that I have at this point. Lenore, is there anything that I've missed, or is there something else that you'd like to add?
I guess for folks to also understand, I don't know if you may have said it earlier, that those trips that we travel to, that those are covered by NJJN. So when we do the time where we're together as a cohort, that travel expense is paid for or compensated.
It is. It is. That is covered by NJJN, all of your travel to and from those events, and we take care of food and everything while you are there with us as well. Okay, I don't know. Jenny, that's all I have. I don't know if I can turn it over to you to see if people have questions, or if anyone wants to raise their hand or to type in a question to the chat.
Yeah. So I don't have any questions from folks so far. So just want to encourage you guys to type in any questions that you have, or you can even raise your hand and talk to our presenters. So while we are waiting for your questions, I have a few things to ask you. So every year when we do the webinar, we would get like similar questions, right? So I have some of the questions right here. So about the employer, one of the documents that people have to submit is the employee affirmation form, right, Tracy, or something like that, like with the employer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So can you explain again what is that form is for, and does that mean that that person has to be employed at the time of the application?
Thank you, Jenny. That's a great question. So there actually are 2 forms. So there's an organization affiliation form that if you are employed within the field of juvenile justice and you believe that your employer would support your participation in this program, then we ask that you get the organizational affiliation form completed with your supervisor sort of committing to allow you to attend those in-persons. And the reason that we do that organizational affiliation form, well, both of them, let me go ahead and tell you about the other. So the other one is an employer affirmation form. So people who may not be working in the field of juvenile justice, we ask that you just tell your employer about what it is that you're doing and to see if your employer would support your participation in it. The thinking behind both of these forms was that we do not want, we want people to be a part of this, but we don't want it to adversely impact you. So we were hoping that employers would allow you would support your time, like financially, if you're on staff, and if it's something that you're doing outside of your work, that they would at least support you in allowing you to take that time off in order to participate in the program without any sort of penalty or detriment. And so that employer affirmation form is just something that you can use to discuss it with your employer, to let them know that you will be requiring some time off in the future, and to just go ahead and get a commitment that they would support you in that. Yeah, I hope that wasn't too confusing, but thank you, Judy. That was a good question. And if anyone has any further questions about that, they can definitely reach out to me.
I might have missed it. So you mentioned that so do they have to be employed again at the time? I'm sorry, I might have missed that.
You don't have to be employed. But if you are employed within the field of juvenile justice work and your organization will support your travel and your time, then that organizational affiliation form needs to be completed. And if you are working but working outside of juvenile justice, there's an employer affirmation form that you can use to discuss the time that you'll need to take off with your employer. But if you are not employed, that doesn't hinder you from participating.
Okay, thank you. All right. Looks like we have some questions. So I'm gonna start with Chen Jiang. Thank you. So we have the question from her, and hang on. So could you share some examples of the past projects of fellows?
Yes, I actually don't have a list of projects sitting here with me, but I can tell you I was a member of the fellowship in 2015. And I can tell you that my project focused around focusing on, and I'm in South Carolina, and we have these evaluation centers. It's like a process within the juvenile justice system here that doesn't necessarily have to be there. And so I did some work around bringing public awareness and attention to those evaluation centers in an attempt to kind of get those closed. Other folks have focused on different areas of the juvenile justice system, like juvenile reentry. Lenore, I don't know what your project was on.
My project was around my work. So some people had a project that was kind of distinctly different from the work that they did professionally, and I tried to align mine with my work. So mine was about getting that relative rate index number and kind of broadening the messaging around racial and ethnic disparities in Pennsylvania. I found that whenever I got into a role, a lot of the people didn't know the data, they didn't know the numbers, and that ignorance allowed them to not react to the problem. And so my project was around being able to show people data and have them kind of react to that. And so some of the other projects, folks worked on the Raise the Age initiatives for their states. I know some people were working on racial impact statements and trying to get that kind of in play for their states. And another person in our cohort was also doing some work advocating for young mothers who were involved in the justice system.
Yeah. And then also on the website, there's a link where you can kind of, I think it's like Meet the Fellows. And so you can click on each cohort and there's a little bit of a description on each cohort. I mean, each person, what that person did as their project. But you really should just kind of think about something that you can be passionate about, because that's really what kind of comes through in the application. So just having acted as a reader of applications in the past, that's something that you look to see, is that, you know, the person is excited about the opportunity to become a leader in this field, is excited about the opportunity to make change, and you can tell that they're really excited about the project. So I would just really encourage you to just kind of to think about what's important to you, or maybe something that's, you know, impacted you or family or friend, or and how you would change that, and think about what that would look like.
Thank you both. We're going to the next question from Rebecca Burney. Thank you. Since you both have talked already about your advocacy projects, so can you tell a little bit more about you know, what makes your advocacy project successful, and also some of the challenges that you had faced with your projects?
I think what made my project, this is Lenora, I think what made my project, or helped to make it successful, was my mentor. Whenever I was assigned my mentor, we immediately set up a call the first Friday of every month. And that was my check-in time with my mentor, to be both accountable to her and primarily to myself, to get done what I said I would do between our calls. So she helped me to make sure that I was staying focused on my goals, that I was really prioritizing things. Where my struggle was that I felt as though things should be moving faster, that I should be able to get things done a little quicker than maybe reality actually showed me. And so that would be where I would say I struggled with it, was that I expected that within that year it was going to be all done and I was going to have a glamorous, nice, shiny booklet to share with people. And while I was well on the way to that, in that 1 year, at the end of it, I did not have that exact product. So that to me would be some of the struggles, but the benefits far outweighed me not getting that done, because it just led me into other things. So I would say the good of that far outweighed what I feel like I didn't accomplish with it.
Thank you, Lenore. Tracy, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that Lenore makes a good point. I think that that's part of everything she said is part of what the Institute is about, and just sort of allowing you to have that support in the process of making these very difficult changes. You know, I mentioned that my project was on the evaluation centers here in South Carolina, and we're still working on that issue. And just last year, I had a senator finally say, "I'm tired of hearing about these eval centers." So, you know, the work does take time, and part of what is important about the fellowships is really creating this community that we can continue to support each other in this work as we do things that are very difficult.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I don't see any more questions, but you guys, again, if you still have any questions, we have some time. So before we move on to the next question that we might have, I understand that the fellows, after they finish with the fellowship, they would have an opportunity to sign up to be and the member of our organization as well, right? An NJJN member. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. So while individuals are part of the fellowship, they will have some limited access to what NJJN as an organization has to offer with regard to informational webinars and our online community forums. But once you become an alumni of the program, you are invited to become a full member of NJJN. There's generally dues associated with becoming a member, but the first year of the program after your alumni is there's no due requirement for that first year, and it really allows individuals to really sort of fully become a part of NJJN and really get involved in some of the working groups that we have to really strategize about how we can tackle these issues together.
Awesome. Thank you. And Lenore, you are our member. I know
Yes,
you are our member.
I am. Yep, I am. I am a member as well. And being a member has also allowed me to participate in the racial justice subcommittee that is a part of NJJN too. So I was not able to participate in that directly prior to being a member. So you do
Awesome.
get definitely access to broader opportunities, to webinars, to some different materials afterwards.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. All right. I guess that's all we have for the questions.
If I could just add one thing to folks who are considering applying, because I've seen it happen, and Tracy, you might have more to say about this, but the months of September that you travel and the April-March timeframe, I think you probably solidify those dates a little closer. But if folks, when they're applying, can really think about their availability during those timeframes, if you could just be forward thinking. Sometimes grant processes come up, or like every year, your organization has a conference in September, then no staff can travel, nobody can do anything. this year might not be the right year for you to apply. I think those face-to-face sessions are really vital. And so if you look at your calendar and feel as though those months, September and or March or April, will prove as a challenge, maybe you'll want to reach out to Tracy and talk it over with her and have some conversations. I've just seen a couple people in recent years who have applied and been accepted, and then they have run into something at work. And of course, all that stuff is okay. But if it's something that you can think of in advance that you know always comes up, if you could just reach out and talk to Tracy about those things and see how you could work through that.
That's a great point. Thank you, Lenore. As I mentioned, a great deal of that leadership development happens during those in-person sessions. So, yes, and I also would just like to comment that, you know, with everything going on with the COVID-19 too, we'll have to just continually kind of assess what that will look like. But we are definitely aware of what's going on, and for the moment are just moving forward as though those dates would be available. But we will also adjust if we need to.
Great. Okay, I think we have covered everything. So if we have no more questions, I would like to thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Lenore, for being here with us, giving all the information needed. And I really encourage you guys to apply. I think it's a great opportunity. Just so you know that there are a lot of documents to be submitted to Tracy, but if you want to start off, you can just fill out the contact form. That is actually the first step. You know, it's easy to fill out, doesn't take longer than like 5 or 10 minutes. So if you just want to go ahead and do that, that can like probably save a lot of your time along the way. All right, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
great evening.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny.
Well.
Thank you. Bye.